Marcus full-time maps coach.
Wow,
Uh,
congratulations.
I didn't get to start coaching top agents in the country. I didn't get to start there. It was a long, slow grind. And at this point, I estimate my calls are 45 minutes. I estimate I've done about 40 or 15,000 calls. We
Wow.
think we hit 10,000 hours in September of last year. So I exist in a coaching conversation. That's where I'm going to spend all day today. So yeah,
Wow. Love that. So what I heard there was you didn't start at the top.
no,
You didn't,
no,
Jay Pappison didn't call you and say, hey, Jordan, you want to coach me?
no, he didn't. I wish he had. It would have maybe fast tracked some things, but
True.
no, it didn't start out that way. But I have a very different approach to things. I wanted to master this, and I set out. What I said was, I'm going to spend 10,000 hours coaching, and then I'm going to spend the next decade doing 10,000 hours of writing, which is what I'm doing now, and then I'm going to spend the next decade doing 10,000 hours of speaking. That'll be after my children are grown and hopefully gone, and so I want to master this. That's been my goal the whole time.
Wow. I love it. And the writing thing, we'll get into it maybe another time. You said you want to share a screen. Would you like to just go ahead and jump in, or is there
Yeah, yeah,
anything?
let's do
Okay,
it.
that's
So,
awesome.
morning, everybody. And Tony just basically introduced me, but for those of you that might have missed that, my name is Jordan Freed. I'm a MAPS executive coach, and I'm here to share with you today just some really kind of cool ideas, things that I work with, whether it's people personally. I do a fair amount of life coaching. That's, in fact, if you ask my daughters, I have two daughters, Leah and Zoe, they're 9 and 11. What does your dad do for a living? They would tell you that I'm a life coach. And then, there's the professional side where I get to coach, as Tony mentioned, some of the biggest and brightest minds in all of real estate. My average client today does about 250 transactions a year, about 150 million in closed volume. So I work primarily with the rainmakers of big teams. But what I wanted to share with you were just some very simple yet foundational models to what I do. And I want to start with back in September of 2024. I got a phone call on a Thursday, and it was Gary Keller, and he said, I would like for you to come to Austin and spend the day with me. And so that was a Thursday. If Gary Keller calls and asks you to come to Austin, you clear your schedule. So the next Tuesday, 4 days later, I'm off to Austin. And we got to spend the whole day together, which was amazing. And Gary was very present throughout that day. And he asked me a lot of questions in the morning. But in the afternoon, it was kind of my turn to ask questions. And I've always kind of been in Gary's orbit one way or another since I joined the company. I was 21, 22 years old when I started selling real estate. And I asked Gary, I said, hey, how does someone like me get to coach someone like you? How does a coach get to coach someone like you? And he said something really brilliant. He said, I am not walking around in the world like most high achievers. I'm not walking around in the world with an empty plate looking for someone to put more on my plate. In fact, I'm walking around with a plate that's typically overflowing. And if you're going to coach me, everything about your approach has to be extremely practical. It has to be extremely practical. It's got to fit right into what it is that I already do. So I started thinking about that, right? Practicality. How do I make my approach really practical? And it kind of set me on a path. And I have a mind for models. I think in models. I don't know if I've always done that or if it's all the years that I've spent coaching. I can tell you one thing that has definitely honed that skill is back in, it was probably 2017, maybe 2016. Diana Kokoska was the person at the time running MAPS. She challenged a group of us to write 50 questions every single week and turn them into her on Sundays. And I did that for 3 years in a row, never missed a Sunday for 3 years, wrote over 3,000 questions. And so for those of you out there who might be looking to enhance your level of communication and influence, regardless of your position. You could be a coach, you could be a team leader, you could be an agent. That's a very useful, practical approach that will help you start to really develop that mindset. But I really got into, okay, when someone comes to a coach, when someone is seeking a coaching relationship, why do they do that? Why does somebody actually come to a coach, right? And I boiled this down to just 4 questions. I believe that 90 to 95% of what people are looking to achieve can actually be found in these 4 questions. The first
Okay.
one, and this is something that you might want to just sit here for a second and answer these questions. But the first one is, what is it that you want and don't have? What is it that you want and don't have? So this might be a version of a business in your head, right? It could be getting physically fit and strong. Maybe you want to enhance the relationship you have with your children. What is it that you want and don't have? Secondly, what is it that you have and don't want? What
Mm.
you have and don't want? I had a woman one time, and look, I have a very holistic style. I am somebody, I call it stealth awareness. Stealth awareness
Okay.
is awareness where I'm able to figure out the solution to problems, and most people have no idea that that is the actual problem, like getting all the way down to the root. And I had a woman one time, I'll never forget it. And it was a very clear, here's something I have and don't want. She had a drug addicted son living in her house every single morning. She felt like, man, I'm going to walk in there and he's going to be gone. And here she is trying to build a real estate business while dealing with that. And I'm glad to say today, that was 8 years ago, he's sober and has dedicated his life to helping addicts and people across the country. Really cool story. But what is it that you have and don't want? Thirdly, what are you not doing that you know that you should be? See, if you're clear on what you want, if you're clear on what you don't want, there are definitely some behaviors, there are some actions that you probably are supposed to be taking, and for whatever reason, you're not taking it. And look, here's the thing. If you're going to be a real coach in the lives of people, then they have to view you as a partner, not a problem. And so when I have people in my world, and let's just say that they agreed, and we'll just use contacts as as an example. They say I'm going to make 50 contacts this week, and they come back to the coaching conversation and they made 35. Well, oftentimes that's where the coaching relationship shifts into, okay, let me get my shame stick out and I'm going to hit you a whole bunch of times with it. And we're going to see how I can get you to now follow through on these actions. But I don't do that. I get deeply curious. See, I think if you're going to be an amazing coach, a leader, a person of influence, you have to be deeply, deeply curious about why people make decisions the way that they do. And what I ask people is, and I'll say this and then I'll come back to it because when I first say this, sometimes it's a little bit confusing. When did your intention become an instead? When did your intention become an instead? Now, here's what I mean. You had an intention of 50 contacts, right? There's a moment in time that you did something else instead. Maybe it was negotiating a contract. Maybe you got or went to a meeting that wasn't the highest use of your time. Maybe you said lunch to a lender that maybe you shouldn't have done that. But I really want to understand, not from a place of judgment, because here's the thing about judgment. No one, including you, has ever benefited from your judgment of them. We don't get better from the judgment that others place upon us or that we place upon ourselves. And so I'm really interested in when did that intention become an instead? Where were you? Who were you with? What was the story you tell yourself? And not from a place of like shame. I really want to understand, because every time we do something and we don't get what we want, we're smarter than we were before. We figured out one more thing that didn't work. And if you don't let that quote unquote failure beat you down, well, let's go at it again. What happened? Let's figure that out. And now we can do it again much more intelligently. When did your intention become an instead? And then lastly, what are you doing that you know you shouldn't be? What are I call it habits of mass destruction? What are the habits that are standing in between you and what it is that you actually want? And are you even aware of it? And so these 4 questions, this is where I'm going to spend the vast majority of my time. And don't get jaded by the simplicity of it. These are very deep and rich once you start to unpack them. But I think if you're going to coach a billionaire, you're going to coach yourself, going to coach anybody, I think you're going to find that 90 to 95% of people are coming to you, or you're coming to a coach looking to get these 4 questions answered. Now, I'll let you in on a little secret as it relates to coaching and the things that I do. The common theme amongst everything that I do is it's all predicated on our commitment to self leadership. Self leadership to me is the keystone of an amazing life. And back in 2019, this was July of 2019. I was on KW Connect, which is our version basically of YouTube, and came across it was an interview between David Voorhees, who's a KWRI employee, and Ben Kinney. And Ben, if you don't know him, he's the co-founder of Place. He built Brivity, which is one of the largest CRMs in real estate today. And David asked Ben a really intelligent question. He said, Ben, how have you consistently surrounded yourself with such magnificent people? How have you done that? And the cool thing about it is that it was a brilliant question asked to a person who has a track record that supports his answer. Meaning, if you look at Ben, people kind of go into his orbit, but they don't typically leave. They go into his orbit and they stay, they stick, right? So he got credibility in this question. And Ben answered in this triangle right here, and it changed everything for me. He said, first, I got really good at leading myself. I got really good at leading myself. Then I earned the right to lead others. I earned the right to lead others. And eventually I started to create leaders. Now at Keller Williams, and we've changed this definition a few times over the years, but the definition of leadership that I use is teaching people how to think so they get what they want when they want it. So he created leaders, and then his organization started to attract leaders. Now this is a rich, rich diagram. And what I love about it first is that it works just as well inside of a family as it does inside of a business. As I mentioned, I have 2 little girls, right? And my goal is for them to attract leaders into their lives. My goal is to teach them how to think so that they get what they want when they want it. And I have to do that through leading them. But listen, you only lead people from one of 2 places, your ego or example. You only lead people from one of 2 places, from your ego or from your example. And we already know that the place that we intend to lead, the best place to lead, is from our example. And it ultimately led to my all-time favorite coaching question. I'm going to give it to you right now. It's very simple and yet super powerful. My all-time favorite coaching question is, how well are you leading yourself? How well are you leading yourself? On a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being you're absolutely nailing it, 0 being you're failing, you can't say 7. How well are you leading yourself? Now, here's the thing, is that if you're going to have an amazing life, right, you've got to get really good at what I call agency. Not buyer and seller agency, But agency is the degree of control you feel you possess over your decisions, behaviors, and emotional states. Agency is the degree of control you feel you possess over your decisions, behaviors, and emotional states. And I'm going to give you kind of the very top level but powerful synopsis of self-leadership. The thing that I really want you to get to understand first is that if you're going to be an amazing self-leader, you have to have a healthy relationship with control. You have to have a healthy relationship with control. Now, control, the idea of control as it exists in our own lives, is kind of like a coin, and it has two sides. See, on one side are the things that we don't control. And a question that I ask people is, what is the uncontrollable you consistently seek to control? What's the uncontrollable you consistently seek to control? And the more you can learn to not waste your energy, to pay no mind to the things that you can't control, the more peace, fulfillment, fun, freedom you will ultimately experience. And I know that that is easier said than done. But on the other side of the coin of control are the things that we do actually control. And I believe in this world, you only control three things: how you think, how you feel, how you act. That's all you control in this world. And what I find in myself and in others is that we actually lose control of what we do control when we're chasing what we don't. You lose control of what you control when you are focused on the uncontrollables. And look, there are some of you who label yourself as, I'm a control freak. You may never say that publicly, but maybe that's an internal label that you give yourself. You're not a control freak. You're a fear freak. Control is a symptom of fear. Because if you control everything, it becomes predictable. You know what to expect. You don't get surprised. You're not going to be able to do it. And so when we look at this coin, right, the thing I would ask you first is, what is the uncontrollable I consistently seek to control? And once you've identified that, how might I get myself to let that go? What is it costing me to hold on to this? But on the other hand, when we think about what we do control, how can I become a master of my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions? Because those are the nucleus of everything it is that you want in this world. Now, if we want to take this one step further, and we're talking about this idea of self-leadership, there's one skill above all inside of self-leadership that has always, and will always reign supreme. And it's personal promise keeping. If you really want to understand self-leadership at its core, it's learning to keep the promises, not that you make to others, but that you make to yourself. It's so important that your audio and video matches. And let me give you an example. Imagine that you're into this movie, right? It's 2 hours long. It's a really good movie. You could be at home, you could be at a movie theater, and you are watching this thing, right? And about an hour into it, you're halfway. The actress's lips start moving, but then there's like a 2 second delay before you hear any of the words. Now, if you are watching a movie that's really good, that you intend to finish, and there's this delay between what she says, right, and then the words coming out of the speakers, I seriously doubt that most of you are going to watch or finish the movie that way. You're probably going to reset the movie if you're at home. If you're at a movie theater, you're going to go get somebody that works there and ask them to reset it, right? And the reason that we don't do that, the reason that we don't watch the rest of the movie that way, is because it is frustrating and distracting. And what I want you to understand, whether it's at home or in your profession, It is equally frustrating and distracting when you constantly say one thing and then do another, when your audio and video don't match. And the whole thing that I want you to get from today is that if you want to have a powerful life, if you want to have a powerful life, you have to develop a powerful relationship with the words that come out of your mouth. If you do not have a powerful relationship with the words that come out of your mouth, you do not have a powerful life. And so when it comes to personal promise keeping, I have two questions for you. One, what are the promises you consistently make and break to yourself? What are the promises you consistently make and break to yourself? I'm going to exercise. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to make this many calls. I'm going to build my business to this point. What are the promises you consistently make and break with yourself? And number two, what is the single promise that if you kept it, it would change everything? Now, when I say this, I want you to hear a word. I said single. Because when I share this with especially real estate agents, guess what? They hear, what are the 4 to 5 promises that I'm going to keep? And one of the things that I've come to know is that when a human being in today's world seeks change, they typically resort to one of two behaviors. They resort to extreme behavior or they resort to gimmicks. Extreme behaviors or gimmicks. So you have someone who maybe they need to get physically fit and strong, and they say, I'm going to do the 75 hard, right? Now, this is somebody who doesn't really work out, who doesn't really eat right. And now all of a sudden, they're going to do 2 45-minute workouts a day, one of them outside. They're going to read 10 pages, follow a diet, drink a gallon of water. And so what's happened is they've changed the learning curve that they need to walk into a learning cliff. They've made the promise so hard and the margin for error so thin that there's no way they're going to keep that promise. And so inevitably they're going to slip and fall, and it's going to reinforce the idea that they don't follow through. On the other hand, gimmicks, you take the learning cliff, you turn it into a curb. You're trying to flatten and make it easier to walk on. But look, anything you cheat with will cheat on you. And I can tell you, after coaching the biggest agents in the world, the work is the hack. Doing the work is the hack. There isn't one of them that evades the hard work. It just doesn't happen. And so the promise that you're looking to keep here, I want it to exist on a learning curve. And what I mean by that is we want to use what's called the Goldilocks effect. The Goldilocks effect comes from Goldilocks and the Three Bears. She breaks into the cottage, right? There's 3 bowls of porridge sitting there. And the first one she tries, too hot. Second one is too cold. Third one, just right. Find a promise that is just right, meaning it's hard for you to keep it, but it's not so hard that you can't. When I decided to shift everything and really start following through on this idea of personal promise keeping, I just told myself, I'm going to take 10,000 steps every day for 100 days. And it didn't matter wind, sun, rain, every day for 100 days. I made 10,000 steps. And it totally changed the relationship I had with myself. Because each and every one of you have what's called a personal podcast. The personal podcast is the story you tell to yourself about yourself when you are by yourself. And you form the opinion you have of yourself the same way you form the opinion of others. Meaning, if you constantly make and break promises with yourself, you erode the very trust that is necessary for you to build the life that you ultimately want. And it's so simple. It's right under our noses. It's one skill. If you're not going to keep the promise, don't make it. But if you're going to make it, keep it. And if you do that, it will consistently increase your answer to the question, how well am I leading myself? And at the end of the day, that's all you control. The rest of it, you can just let go. And what we ultimately want as it relates to the pursuits of our visions and our goals, we are fully engaged and 100% unattached. And that is as good as you can do. You can put your head on the pillow at night knowing I did what I could with the time that I had. I led myself well. So that's what I would encourage you all to focus on moving forward. One simple question, one simple idea. And I'll give you one last hack on this. Take out a dry erase marker, go to your bathroom mirror, and write this question on the mirror. Did I lead myself today better than I did yesterday? And then just keep getting better. That's it. It's so much simpler than we make it. So Tony, thank you.
Jordan, that was you may have done this before. You're like spot on 1 minute to go, as we have a hard stop at 9. This was great. I really appreciate you taking the time. Selfishly, as a coach, this really resonates with me. This is great stuff. Really, really enjoyed it. So I want to appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. Hopefully your third winter does not appear. You get some good weather, and I hope you guys take some. There's some absolute nuggets, and this will be on KW Metro EU, where you guys can go back and watch it. Thank you, Jordan.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate you, man.
Yep.
Have a great day, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.